When my husband and I bought our house, we were so excited for that first Halloween. We were excited to put our costumes on and to get a big bowl of candy and sit on our front stoop with our dog. That night, we sat and we waited, and not a single child came. Well, we're sitting there, we're looking up and down the block. Most homes had their lights off. The street was pretty dark. No children's laughter rang through the air. On an evening when community should have been natural, it was non-existent. This is one example of a stark reality. Americans are lonely, and it's getting worse. Nearly 50% of Americans self-reported feeling lonely some of the time in our last batch of US Census Bureau data. And we know that loneliness causes harm. The impact of social isolation on mortality is similar to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Loneliness is such a threat that the US Surgeon General issued an advisory on the matter last year. But I want to share another data point. 80% of Americans live near their neighbors. So, social isolation is not the cause of our loneliness. What if we could leverage our neighborhoods into real communities? This is not a Herculean task, but one that takes something so many of us forget when building connection: intentionality. Let me explain. Fast forward a year, now we're in Halloween 2017. And a whole different scene would unfold on our block. Community thrived due to a few small steps that made a big impact. I decided that we didn't want to sit alone in the dark and pass out candy to no kids. So I printed invitations and I knocked on the 30-ish doors of our block, inviting neighbors to come to the end of the street and pass out candy as a group. Neighbors greeted each other, neighbors learned each other's name, and community was built over a few folding tables. Some neighbors had lived on the block for almost a quarter of a century, but had never met or interacted with each other. Several mentioned how wonderful it was to get to know those people who lived so close. This one event to get people out of their houses interacting with each other began the process of turning our block into a community. Community building frequently takes a few small steps. This was a block of neighbors. Some had lived there for 25 years, yet remained strangers. And the small act of printing invitations and pulling out folding tables made a difference. It began to create belonging over time, as we did this year on year. Now, it would be so easy to stay in your houses or to sit on your couch or to stay in your car and ignore those around you. And it feels safe to everybody to stay within those four walls of our conditioned houses. And if we're truly being honest, taking that first step and interacting with a neighbor who is still a stranger, puts knots in everybody's stomachs. But by taking that small step and connecting or reaching out, or by acting on and responding to those invitations, we can make a difference. Fast forward a handful of years, the COVID-19 pandemic would increase Americans' isolation. We all retreated inside our homes to stop the spread and protect the most vulnerable. But with that retreat, our loneliness grew. A group of neighbors saw the need for connection in the wake of the pandemic, and collectively, we decided to act. Very grassroots style, we started to spread the word. We're knocking on doors, we're putting flyers on street poles, and a neighborhood community building event was born. Tiny porch concerts. Yeah, like NPR's Tiny Desk concerts. This event would grow bigger and more impactful than any of us could ever imagine. Each month, 3 neighbors open the front of their homes. It could be their yards or their porches or their stoops, and 6 different local Richmond musicians serenade our streets. Neighbors come out of their houses, they smile, they greet each other, they interact. Each month, you'll easily see 300 neighbors walking throughout the street. Now, an outdoor concert is magical on its own, 100%. But the magic in Tiny Porch lies in the community building. We took those same deliberate steps from Halloween community building. We're knocking on doors, we're interacting with people face to face, and inviting neighbors out to listen to music. And that music helps break down the barriers of making connection. It serves as a bridge to build trust and reduce anxiety. You don't have to have an initial deep conversation. Music gives you a shared experience. So month on month and over time, you can build belonging. Music, though, is only one of the many conduits for building relationships. Let's take a scenario of starting a weekly run or walking group and apply those same small steps. Invite a neighbor to walk with you before work or run with you after work, and then invite them again, and invite them again, and invite them again. You're taking the activity from just pleasantries or accountability and moving your body to instead a regular check-in on each other's lives, a check-in on how work's going, a check-in on whatever your most recent home project is, because of your intentionality and that initial small step. Your consistency builds trust and belonging over time. And it started with that small, deliberate step. I want to start a running group. Come join me. Come join me again next week. Hey, I saw you out running. I run too. Come with me sometime. And do it again, and show up, and be consistent, and look at that community. It's not always fun, though. We can sometimes build community amidst chaos. A year and a half ago or so, a surprise freak thunderstorm blew through Richmond. It brought heavy rains and tornado force gusts. A huge tree fell on our neighbor's house. Rain was pouring in, there was drywall, debris everywhere. Because of how our block had coalesced years prior, another neighbor was able to send out the bat signal and get all the neighbors out to help. Neighbors are running out of their houses, they're bringing their shop vacs, they're eager to support. One neighbor realized that only so many of us could mop up the floors, pull debris out of houses, plug in fans and dehumidifiers, but many folks wanted to help. I went and grabbed a case of drinks and started passing them out to bring in that sense of belonging, to show that you belong here, whoever you are, and made sure to introduce everyone who hadn't already met yet. Those that came out that night were brought closer together, and it started with a few small steps. Get off your couch, check in with a neighbor, and build that sense of belonging. So my charge for you is to be intentional about community. Go out and connect with a neighbor. Invite them to pass out candy, invite them to listen to music, invite them to go on a run with you, step outside and offer help, and then once you've done that, then do it again. Thank you.